The rooster's crow mingled with the distant hum of motorcycles as the sun melted the shadows of Makuta. In a modest clay house, nestled between jacaranda and baobab, Ifoma schooned millet porridge into bowls. Across the courtyard, her son, Chuka, scrubbed the steps, his broad back hunched in concentration. Subscribe and hit like. Our powerful stories add years to your life. Join our Story Lovers Club and let us know in the comments, where are you listening from? Neighbors drifted past, flashing quick-eyed glances. Foma lived alone with Chuka ever since her husband vanished with the harmattan 2 decades ago. The unspoken absence left a tang in the air, but she bore it quietly, shoulders squared by years of silent labor and careful dignity. Chuka, 22 and restless, was known for his odd drawings and repairs. He'd solder radios for fishermen, sketch wild antelopes for children. His hands moved with a grace that belied his stocky build. Lessons bloom, a talent mostly unnoticed, except by Ifoma and the old teacher. That morning, as sunlight warmed the red soil, a motorcycle skidded to a stop. Benji, the erratic courier, handed Ifoma a thick envelope marked with foreign stamps. Her heart fluttered as she recognized the sender, her brother, Ade, exiled for reasons whispered about but never named. Inside was a message, a fraught invitation to come to Lagos, where Ade had become one of the city's Lesso tycoons. He spoke of family, secrets, and restitution, but mostly he asked after Chuka. The letter's tone carried urgency, veiled in the polite language of reconciliation. Ifeoma, hesitating, folded the letter into her pocket, telling herself she'd answer tomorrow. That Sunday, families in Makuta gathered in the churchyard for the harvest blessing. Old grievances were set aside for an afternoon. Children darted through cassava rows. Elders compared yam yields. Traders bickered benignly over fishing rights. Among the crowd, Chuka caught the eye of Nia, a girl with clever hands and shy laughter, who lived in the shadow of her stepfather's temper. Nia, like Chuka, carried the aura of the overlooked. Her beauty was muted by plain dresses, her voice quashed by household demands. As the crowd dispersed, Mama Zara beckoned Chuka. She pressed a folded paper into his hand, a drawing she found in her old cabinet, signed in a distinctive angular style. "Did you do this?" she asked. Chuka shook his head, but something in the lines was hauntingly familiar. He pocketed the sketch, studying the signature. At home, Ifeoma unearthed old photographs. Her husband's face stared back, youthful, intent. Next to him stood Ade, the same angular signature on a painting behind them. The flicker of recognition and foreboding ran through her. Chuka's birth, her husband's disappearance, Ade's exile, threads knotting into something unspoken, something that buzzed behind everyday silence. Chuka brooded over the sketch, matching the lines to the carvings on his father's cane, which leaned untouched by the hearth. A black SUV rolled down Makuta's narrow lane, stirring gossip like dust. Out stepped Mr. Okoye, Lagos lawyer, crisp-suited and stern. He carried a briefcase and the authority of distant cities. He quietly offered Ifoma a proposal, Ade wished to sponsor Chuka's education, but only if they came to Lagos within the month. Chuka protested. He wanted to stay, refine his metalwork, teach Nia to sketch. But Ifoma saw opportunity flickering amid uncertainty. The promise of new beginnings, the tug of buried kinships. The village gathered to see them off. Ifoma, her face set hard against tears, packed a borrowed knapsack. Chuka moved slowly, dazed by the abruptness of change. Nia pressed a folded note into his hand, a sketch of her with his favorite antelope, shyly defiant. Mama Zara gave him an old, battered pencil, whispering, "Talent carves its own path. Don't forget." In the bus's dim interior, Makuta fell away into memory. The air shifted from earth and smoke to the metallic tang of the highway. Lagos drawing near with each kilometer. Lagos towered and sprawled by turns. Glassy skyscrapers beside slums. Blossoms of jacaranda squeezed between concrete. Ade's mansion, gated and guarded, sat aloof among embassies and ministries. Inside, high ceilings echoed, and the staff moved in silence. Ade met them with a politician's smile and eyes that darted over Chuka, measuring, wary. At dinner, conversation flickered between pleasantries and hidden tensions. Ade spoke of opportunity, city life, and the dangers of those born for smaller places. Yet in his study hung paintings, angular, kinetic, signed in the same hand as Chuka's sketch. That first night, Chuka roamed the hallways. In a locked study, he glimpsed a small shrine. Photographs of a young Ifeoma, a baby in her arms, and Ade himself, somber and thin in a borrowed suit. There were letters, some torn, some stitched together, names blacked out with bold ink. He heard footsteps and retreated, questions blooming into unease. He called Nia. "It's not home, but there's something here for me, I think." At Ade's urging, Chuka entered a scholarship competition at a prestigious art institute. Rich heirs and prodigies crowded the room, their accents polished. Chuka's clothes were too loose. His hands trembled when he unpacked his battered pencils. When the director, a severe woman named Mrs. Ajayi, reviewed his work, she raised an eyebrow. "Who taught you this shading?" she inquired. Chuka shrugged, watching the river and the light. As the judges deliberated, laughter rippled from two boys in pressed uniforms. "Did he draw with charcoal from his mother's fire?" they sneered. Mrs. Ajayi silenced them with a look, lingering a moment on Chuka's sketch. The old cane, half-hidden antelope. Lines interlocked just like the signature he'd carried from Makuta. The results were posted in the evening. Chuka was chosen first, his name startling even him. Ade hid his delight, but later in the garden, confided in Ifoma. "He's got it, your husband's touch, my brother's stubborn gift," Ade said. "I tried for years, but he exceeded me. What else have you kept from me, sister?" Ifoma replied, steady, "You knew pieces, not the whole. He is not the mirror of any man, but of his own work." As weeks passed, Chuka grew into his new role at the Art Institute. Newspapers began to notice his innovative techniques. He etched village memories into metal, merged recycled scrap into breathtaking forms. Lessons bloom. Some students warmed to him. Others whispered about backwater charity cases. He missed Makuta, especially Nia. Ifeoma, meanwhile, managed Ade's sprawling household, wary of his changing moods. At nights, Chuka observed family photos shifting around the mansion. Sometimes his father's face was tucked behind a frame, or a name tag would be flipped over on a painting. Ade seemed both proud and troubled. One servant, Amaka, discreetly warned Chuka, "Master keeps doors locked for a reason. Past here holds much shadow, Chuka." Chuka replied, "We all walk in someone's shadow, but I'll make my own light." One evening, Ifeoma bought groceries at a nearby stall. She noticed she was being watched. A hulking man lingered at every turn, feigning interest in yams. That night, their gate was rattled, and a warning note slipped under the door. "Stay away from inheritance." Lagos, it seemed, had sharper teeth than Makuta. Ade brushed it aside, but Chuka confronted him. "Why are we really here? Did you send for us just to flaunt your success?" Ade replied sadly, "I made mistakes. Old debts. Enemies and family, Chuka. They cling to you." A week later, a package arrived, addressed to Ayo, Chuka's birth name, known only to Ifoma and a few Makuta elders. Inside, a battered sketchbook filled with his father's art, and a letter, pages brittle and ink faded by time. "To my son, I pray you find your own vision and carve it into the world. Family is not blood, but what survives adversity together." Chuka sat all night, tracing sketches, realizing themes. Antelope and cane, a bent man's silhouette, were in his own art long before he'd seen these pages. Far away, Nia faced growing violence. Her stepfather, discovering her sketches, accused her of idleness and sent her out to hawk oranges in dangerous quarters. One evening, when she didn't return, Mama Zara sent word to Lagos by an old Makuta cousin staying in the city slums. The message reached Chuka. "Nia missing. Come quick." Ifeoma insisted on joining him. Ade hesitated, but relented, offering his driver and a substantial wad of cash. "Find her. Don't let the city eat her whole." They dove into Lagos's labyrinth, low-lit alleys, marketplaces boiling with noise, shanties patched from plastic and hope. Chuka asked the street kids, offering sketches in trade for news. Finally, a boy led them to an abandoned warehouse. Nia huddled inside, lips split, clutching her sketchbook. When she saw Chuka, she wept for the first time in years. Ifeoma wrapped Nia in a cloth, whispering, "You are safe. Family is not who you are born to, but who finds you lost." Back at Ade's home, Nia struggled to settle among strangers and chandeliers. Ifeoma advocated for her, pushing Ade to let her stay, at least until things could be sorted in Makuta. Amid uneasy glances and rumors among staff, Chuka and Nia rebuilt their quiet trust, sharing stories and sketches under the mango trees in the Bat Barden. Nia's presence changed rhythms in the household. For the first time, Ade observed their closeness, the shared traits in their drawings. the way Chuka shielded Nia from sharp words. Ifeoma took every chance to drop stories about Nia's strength, her resilience, a subtle push against her old friend's old beliefs. Word spread in the institute. Some students mocked Chuka for bringing the market girl to formal events and open studios. At one exhibition, a wealthy patron's daughter spilled paint accidentally on Nia's dress. Chuka, heart pounding, stood up to the privilege and scorn, correcting the girl with calm dignity. Mrs. Ajayi, watching silently from a distance, made a note in her ledger. Later, Mrs. Ajayi showed Nia one of Chuka's metal antelopes, displayed alongside the works of the city's master artists. Some see what is shown. Talent knows where to look, she said gently, offering Nia a junior workshop post. Exploring Ade's study late one night, Ifeoma and Chuka found a hidden bottom drawer beneath an old sideboard. Inside, a ledger tracking secret payments to Makuta, to a midwife, to a struggling neighbor, and last, to Mama Zara. There were letters, one from their missing father. Hide my shame, but not from the children. Chuka finally confronted Ade. What have you paid our family for all these years? Ade's defenses broke. Your father and I, we were brothers by blood and by vow, but he stole from our own. I tried to repair what he ruined, your chance, your mother's peace. The past is always buried shallow, Io. That revelation shook Chuka. His sense of self, so defined against the absence of a father, blurred. Was he his father's son, or the product of both men's choices? Was Nia only a companion, or did their fates run even deeper? Ifeoma recounted everything: the betrayal, her quiet acceptance, the role of Mama Zara, the one who had protected both children from the flames of scandal. Meanwhile, some of Ade's old rivals, corrupt businessmen, slighted by his attempts at reform and reconciliation, began pressuring him. Threats returned. The house was watched at night. Once, Nia returned from the store to find someone rooting through her drawings. Mama Zara arrived quietly from Makuta, summoned by Ifeoma's coded letter. Over bitter cola and millet, she told Chuka and Nia a story. There was a boy with a gift, and a girl with spirit. Both were left behind by men drunk on pride. But not alone. Blood is a circle, sometimes tight, sometimes tangled. No family survives unless it chooses what to pardon, what to fight for. She gave Chuka the original of his father's last painting, an antelope beside a girl in blue, signature clear, the lines merging both faces. Chuka realized Nia and he were cousins, cast apart by their father's secrecy, now bound by years of loyalty and small kindnesses. Armed with knowledge, Chuka's heart was heavy but focused. He and Nia talked late, unraveling their family ties, not lovers, as childhood affection once hinted, but kin, survivors of the same hidden wounds. Instead of distance, it drew them closer in understanding and in purpose. Ifeoma encouraged both. Family is what you do for each other, not what secrets say. Meanwhile, Ade's enemies circled. One night, a fire broke out in a back storeroom. Arson. Unmistakable. A message. Ade admitted his fortune was built not only on honest work, but on deals that ruined friends and kin. His attempts to repair the past had made him targets once again. Chuka could have fled with newfound scholarship money, left Lagos behind. Instead, he made his choice. He would stand and help Ade protect what mattered, as a son and a nephew. In the chaos after the fire, a new visitor arrived. Mrs. Ajayi, stern and watchful, but with Lagos police trailing. It emerged that she had once been close to Ade's former rival, a painter forced into exile by Ade's earlier ambitions. But Mrs. Ajayi had not forgotten kindness. When her daughter was ill, Ifeoma, the village nurse, had saved her. Now Mrs. Ajayi held legal documents, evidence that absolved Ade of the worst charges his enemies laid against him, and counterclaims that would protect the family's assets. She offered Chuka and Nia space in her institute, shelter for the family if things broke down. Makuta saved my child. Now I pay my debt with truth, she said. Her intervention changed the terms of conflict. The most ruthless of Ade's adversaries, fearing exposure and prosecution, withdrew their threats. In a public exhibition, Mrs. Ajayi shifted the spotlight. The city's critics, expecting the same gallery stars, were met instead by Nia's quietly powerful market scenes and Chuka's dazzling welded forms. Many of the elite artists were forced to reckon with their own prejudices. The crowd's applause came, first a trickle, then a roar. Even the wealthy patron's daughter, shamed by Nia's success, offered a soft apology. Nia accepted, with a grace formed in hardship. "We all begin as strangers to ourselves," she replied. Chuka's art showed his journey, the blending of village and city, of pain and hope, talent emerging from the margins. His name was no longer whispered as a charity case, but as a rising star. His status transformed by the force of his work and a story behind it. Ade, chastened and grateful, returned with Ifeoma and the young artist to Makuta to make amends in person. A new arts center was founded, scholarships awarded to village children, and Nia appointed its first coordinator. Chuka led workshops for those called impossible. Some of those who had mocked him in Lagos now begged to collaborate. Mama Zara, seated at the opening, laughed softly. See how stories thread together? The circle opens wider and the river runs on. The family's legacy was reshaped not by wealth, but by what they gave back. Ade invested in community health and education, forsaking his most corrupt partners. Ifeoma, finally at peace, saw both her son and niece join together not as lovers, but as siblings of circumstance, flourish without shame. Chuka visited his father's grave at last, sketchbook in hand. He traced new lines, preparing for what would come next. The past had given scars and debts, but also tools for the future. Makuta was transformed. Children's laughter spilled from the new art center. Nia's gentle mentorship turned shyness into layered colors on canvas. Chuka worked alongside eager students, his own hands guiding rusty wire and scavenged paint into proud new forms. Old rivalries faded as villagers realized the art center had brought health, visitors, and a sense of pride that belonged to everyone. In Lagos, Chuka's reputation grew, a feature in newspapers, an exhibition abroad. Yet on each trip home, he found the most inspiration in Makuta's dawn, in Nia's stories, and in Ifeoma's quiet faith. Ade, his health weakened by years of guilt and stress, visited often. He walked without retinue, sitting with Ifeoma and Mama Zara beneath the mango trees. There, he finally let go of old regrets, entrusting the future to hands steadier and hearts kinder than his had been. At a village celebration, Chuka rose to speak. He looked at Nia, at his mother, at fellow students and elders. We may be scattered by hardship, by lies, by pride, but we can choose what we build together. Art was my inheritance, but now we all share it. Young voices chorused poetry and laughter. For a moment, the scars of the past became simply lines in a larger painting. Nia smiled, tears in her eyes. Family, she whispered, can be chosen more than once. In the season's first rain, Nia and Chuka sheltered together, sketchbooks open, with younger children crowding around. Mama Zara watched from her porch, humming an old song. The river, swollen and bright, seemed to carry away the last whisper of sorrow. The streets of Makuta, once quiet, now alive with color and music, proved that no secret, no history was stronger than what a family created anew. Far across the city, in Lagos, the wind carried news of Makuta's change. Some said a boy from the village had reimagined what family could mean. Chuka, watching thunderclouds light the horizon, only smiled. He knew the story would run on. Lessons bloom, as rivers always do, unfinished but full of promise.